Here's something that surprises most people when they first encounter it. In a modern chip, the wires are often slower than the transistors. Think about that for a moment. We have spent decades making transistors faster, smaller, more efficient, switching in picoseconds. But the wires connecting them, those haven't kept up. And that asymmetry has fundamentally changed how chip designers think about timing. In this video, we'll dig into why interconnect delay exists, how it's modeled, and critically, what designers actually do about it. By the end, you'll understand why physical design is just as important to timing closure as the logic itself. Before we focus on wires, let's zoom out and look at where delay actually comes from in a timing path. When a signal travels from one flip flop to the next, it accumulates delay from three sources. First, the clock to cue delay of the launch flip flop. That's fixed by cell design. Second, the propagation delay of the logic gates along the path. Third, and this is the one we are focusing on today, the delay of the interconnect wires, stitching it all together. Here's the number that should make you sit up and notice. In a realistic example, the clock to Q might be 80 picoseconds. Gate delays might total 150 picoseconds, and the wire delay alone can hit 200 picoseconds or more. The wire is the single biggest contributor. This isn't a corner case. In modern designs, interconnect routinely dominates total path delay. That changes everything about how you approach timing closure. So, why do wires slow things down? Weren't we told in school that wires are ideal conductors? At the scale of a chip, they're not. Real metal interconnect have two properties that cause delay: resistance and capacitance. Resistance comes from the finite conductivity of the metal. The wire fights the current passing through it. Capacitance comes from the electric field the wire forms with its neighbors and the substrate beneath it. It's essentially an unintended capacitor built into every connection. Together, these form an RC network. When a signal transitions, it has to charge and discharge these capacitances through the resistance. That charging takes time. The result is a sluggish signal edge, and that sluggishness is what shows up as a propagation delay in your timing reports. The bad news: delays doesn't scale gently with wire length, it accelerates. Look at the numbers. A 100 micron wire might add up to 20 picoseconds of delay. Manageable. Stretch that to 500 microns and you're at 120 picoseconds. Go to 1 millimeter and it climbs to 300 picoseconds, more than the entire gate delay budget on many paths. The curve on the slide tells the story. It's not a straight line, it bends upwards. That's because both resistance and capacitance grow with length and delay scales with their product. The practical implication: any signal that needs to travel across a large block, say a data bus crossing from one corner of the CPU to another, is going to pay a serious timing penalty. Designers can't ignore it. This has to be planned for. Here's where the historical context becomes important. For decades, Moore's law gave us faster transistors with every process generation, smaller devices, lower capacitance, higher switching speed. Transistor delay fell reliably, but wires don't follow the same physics. As process nodes shrink, wires get thinner, and thinner wires have higher resistance per unit length. The capacitance between tightly packed wires also doesn't shrink as gracefully. And crucially, the chip die size doesn't shrink at the same rate as the features. So global wires spanning the chip can actually get longer in relative terms. The result is a growing mismatch. Every generation, transistors get a little faster, wires get a little worse. At advanced nodes, a single long global wire can have more delay than a chain of a dozen logic gates. That's the world modern chip designers live in. To actually predict and fix wire delay, you need a model. The standard approach is the distributed RC model. Instead of treating a wire as a single lumped RNC, you slice it into many segments, each with a small resistance in series and a small capacitance to ground. Stack enough of these together and you have a faithful representation of how a real signal propagates down a metal trace. What this model captures that a simple lumped model misses is the distributed nature of the charging process. The signal doesn't wait for the full wire capacitance to charge. It propagates segment by segment, with each section charging through the resistance behind it. Three things control the total delay: wire length, load capacitance at the receiver, and the driver strength, how much current the driving gate can push. Make the wire longer or the load bigger or the driver weaker and the delay goes up. This is exactly what your STA tool is calculating under the hood every time it analyzes an interconnect segment. There's a beautifully simple model that captures the RC delay of a distributed wire, the Elmore delay. The core idea is that you can approximate the delay at each node in an RC network by summing the resistance capacitance products along the path from the driver to the node. For a uniform wire, this works out to a delay proportional to RC, where both R and C themselves grow linearly with length. Here's the punchline. If both R and C are proportional to length, then the delay is proportional to length squared. Double the wire length and the delay quadruples, not doubles. That squared relationship is why very long wires are catastrophic for timing. A wire 3 times longer isn't 3 times slower, it's 9 times slower. This is the mathematical heart of why global interconnect dominates timing budgets, and why you cannot just let signals run unimpeded across a large chip. So, once you understand the squared relationship, the solution becomes obvious. Don't let the wires be long. If a 1 mm wire has enormous RC delay, break it into four 250 micron segments. Each wire now has 1/4 of the resistance and 1/4 of the capacitance. The delay of each segment is proportional to 1 by 4th the whole squared or 1 by 16th of the original. And you have four of them, so the total delay is roughly 4 times 1 by 16 or 1/4 of what it was. The catch: something has to drive each segment. That's where a repeater comes in. A repeater, which is essentially a buffer, sits at each breakpoint, regenerates the signal, and drives the next segment with full strength. Before repeaters, one slow, degraded signal crawling across the chip. After repeaters, a chain of clean, fast signal hops. Same logical connection, much faster. Now, repeaters do three things well. They reduce the RC delay by shortening effective wire segments. They restore signal strength that degrades over a long wire. And they sharpen transition times, which matters because a slow edge at an input causes its own additional delay through a receiving gate. The trade offs are real though. Every repeater consumes silicon area. On a chip with thousands of long wires, repeater area adds up. And every repeater switches with the signal, consuming dynamic power. You're paying in area and power to buy back speed. The good news: physical design tools handle the optimization automatically. Given the wire parameters and the timing constraints, the tool computes how many repeaters to insert and at what spacing to hit the best balance. The designer sets the goals, the tool finds the solution. Now we can state the full picture of what STA is actually analyzing. Total path delay is TCQ plus T logic plus T wire. In older technologies, T wire was a minor correction. In modern designs, T wire is much greater than T logic. The wire delay equals or exceeds all the gate delays on the path combined. This has a profound implication. You cannot achieve timing closure through logic optimization alone. A perfectly optimized gate level netlist dropped into a poor physical implementation with long interconnect will fail timing. The physical design, where cells are placed, how wires are routed, where repeaters are inserted, is equally important as the logic itself. This is why the synthesis to sign off flow isn't a one way pipeline. Timing is iterative, cycling between logic optimization and physical refinement until the whole design converges. So, the most powerful lever for controlling interconnect delay is also the most upstream: placement. Placement decides where every logic cell sits on the die. If the placer puts two cells that communicate heavily on opposite sides of the chip, the wire between them will be long, and no amount of routing cleverness will fix it. The delay budget is largely spent the moment placement is committed. Good placement does the opposite. It clusters cells that talk to each other, keeping connections short. A wire that's 50 microns instead of 500 microns isn't just 10x less resistance and capacitance. Remember the square relationship? It's roughly 100x less delay contribution. This is why timing driven placement is a distinct phase in the flow. The placer isn't just fitting cells into available space, it's making timing decisions that will propagate all the way through sign off. Not all wires on a chip are created equal. Modern design use a hierarchy of metal layers, and the type of wire determines the delay profile. Local interconnect lives on the lower metal layers. These wires are short, connecting gates within the same logic block, and their delay is typically small and manageable. Global interconnect lives on the upper metal layers where wider, taller wires carry lower resistance per unit length. But global wires span long distances, connecting functional blocks, distributing clocks, carrying data buses across the chip. Their total length is large, and even with wider metal, their delay dominates. The insight for timing analysis: when you see a long path violation in your STA report, the first question to ask is which wires are contributing. Almost always, it's a global interconnect segment and not the gate delays that's burning the timing budget. So, placement sets the wire length, routing determines almost everything else. After placement, the router must choose a physical metal path connecting each cell pin. It chooses which metal layer to use, which direction to run the wire, and how to navigate around other signals. These choices matter enormously for delay. A wire routed on a lower, thinner metal has higher resistance than the same wire on an upper, thicker layer. A wire forced to detour around congestion is longer than it needs to be. A wire sharing a tight channel with many neighbors has higher capacitance from coupling. This is why STA is repeated after routing. Pre-route timing estimates use statistical wire length models. They're good approximations but not exact. Post-route STA uses the actual routed geometry extracted from the layout. If new violations appear after routing, the physical design team goes back to fix them. When interconnect is the culprit on a failing path, the fix toolkit is different from the logic domain. Cell relocation moves a cell physically to its driver or receiver, shortening the wire. This is the most direct fix: less wire, less delay. Buffer insertion breaks a long wire into segments, as we covered. Each segment sees less RC and the total delay drops. Wire layer optimization reroutes a critical net onto a higher, lower resistance metal layer. Same physical path, better electrical properties. Routing detours can sometimes help, not by adding length, but by moving a wire away from congested regions where coupling capacitance is high. These aren't exotic techniques. They are standard moves in every physical design engineer's playbook, and EDA tools apply them automatically during timing closure iterations. The goal in every case is the same: reduce T wire on the paths that are failing. So let's lock in the key ideas. Wires are not ideal. Every interconnect segment adds resistance and capacitance, and the signal pays a delay penalty to charge through that RC network. The longer the wire, the worse it gets. And because delay scales with length squared, long wires are disproportionately slow. In modern technology nodes, this isn't a second order effect. Interconnect delay frequently exceeds gate delay, and it is the primary reason why timing closure requires physical design expertise, not just logic optimization. The tools in the arsenal are placement optimization, repeater insertion, routing improvements, and layer selection. Together, they give designers the control they need to meet timing, even as wires get relatively harder with each process generation. Understanding this is what separates a designer who can read a timing report from one who can actually fix what's in it. And that's what exactly we'll build next.